Key Peninsula, which is on the western half of Washington State in Puget Sound. Oh, I would say 20 miles north of Olympia. As the crow flies, so you've got a body of water between us and Olympia, and there's not a lot of people coming through. I originally got started in all of this because we bought this property for a retirement, but then we weren't sure what was going to happen beyond the borders of the property, and I guess all I could really see is that every time somebody bought another piece of property out here, they were developing it. What I wanted to do is just basically get an area where we weren't mowing everything down and like trying to reclaim it from the blackberries. So where you see all of these evergreens right here, these were all 8-foot high blackberries. So like this tree right here, this is actually one of the first trees that I ever rescued right here. And where it all started is I was looking on Craigslist one day and I saw that somebody had like 15 of these that they didn't want to cut down, but they wanted somebody to save them. So I took it on. These were probably about half the size, and I probably lost half of them in the transplant. But it kind of drove me to think, well, I could replant this entire area, get rid of the blackberries, and have a nice border, something indigenous that would support the local habitat of wildlife. So I started this effort. At that point, I started placing ads on Craigslist that I would save trees, and then people started contacting me through Craigslist to save their trees. Well, there was a newspaper article which covered like 80% of the front page. So then when that came out, I probably had 600 offers for trees in a matter of just like a couple of weeks. Of that, I could probably only take 300 potted trees because it was too late in the year for anything. I put the rest of the people on hold and for the following year, and I couldn't get 300 trees, so there's a lot I just could not get. So I probably transplanted about 2,000 trees. I probably planted about another 1,500 trees with other people, you know, that have come out here and just, it's funny because after I've been transplanting all these trees, like people just want to come out here and see them, and then they want to help plant, which I find really quite flattering, you know, that they want to do it. But look at this. First year I got this out here, there's already a nest in it. I really want to be able to do things like that, is build a natural habitat. And if you take something like this little area where there's huckleberry and there's blackberries and there's salal and there's all this stuff, I just want to clear back the blackberry and let everything else grow naturally. I'm not the kind of person that goes to a gym, only because I don't see a whole lot of sense in lifting weights. And if you're going to lift weight, well, do something valuable. And so digging a tree up and moving it is lifting weight, and I'm getting my exercise. And I'd hurt my back a number of years ago. And since I was moving trees and everything, I've never had any back issues because I'm forcing myself to work really, really hard. Something to do in the wintertime to keep my mind off the lack of light. Yeah. So I mean, I take all kinds of things, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to knock out so much indigenous species of trees and shrubs, you know, just to put ornamentals in. But I kind of feel like I'll put ornamentals in here, and then I'll leave all the outer areas with indigenous species, because they're going to grow best in the long run. I'm not going to be there to maintain them forever. And this is the Joshua tree. There was a lady that read the newspaper article, and she had lost her son in Europe in an avalanche when he was snowboarding. And they gave out 75 saplings at his memorial. And I think there were about 5 of the saplings left over, and they had potted them. And about a couple of years had gone by, but this was getting too big in the pot out in their backyard. And her son Joshua, who had passed away, she needed a place for the tree to go because it was just getting way too big. And I think it gave her a lot of closure, thinking that she just needed to it was time for her to let her son go. And I call this my Joshua tree. So even though it's not from the Joshua Tree National Forest, it is my Joshua tree. You see that Doug fir right there, it's all gray. It died from too much water. And I'll leave it standing, but I'll just probably trim it way back. And I'll just let the woodpeckers take it over and the bugs take it over. And you know, it's amazing, but you know, the first thing we want to do when a tree dies is cut it down. But when you do that, you kind of skip a lot of the life cycle of what it provides for everything else. And so I think a lot of this is a practice for me in thinking about that in a very conscious way, you know. Nothing's permanent. And this lady, I was really surprised. Back in the fall of 1979, had stolen 3 little saplings from the parking lot of Spirit Lake up on Mount St. Helen. And they'd taken them home, they'd put one in the ground, they left the other 2 in pots. Well, 8 months later, Mount St. Helens erupted and wiped out Spirit Lake. And they still had the 3 saplings, 1 in the ground. So after the newspaper article came out, she had contacted me and said they had a potted tree. They had one they had put in the ground 2 years earlier, and they had one that they had put in the ground in 1980. I couldn't get that one out of the ground. But this one was the potted one. And it was so gnarly looking, a beautiful bonsai tree. And so I brought it out here, but then that same year the deer got to it. You can see they just ripped it all up, so I have to keep a cage on it so that they don't kill it, because this is the only surviving tree from Mount St. Helens. The other one I tried to dig up, it died. So I call this one the spirit tree. Yeah. This was actually kind of inspiring for me to have this tree, because I mean, it's pretty massive, and it kind of defines like how this property feels. And I always thought, God, what if this tree just like fell over? And I guess in some way I just want to keep planting, because maybe there might be another big spectacular tree like this when it's time for this one to go. People just find me on the internet, you know, from like Who Saves Trees, you know, and then Seattle, and then my name comes up, and then they contact me through my website, and I get these emails out of the blue